If you're wondering which situation would most likely benefit from peer mediation, then this video is for you. Whether you find yourself in a simmering but ongoing state of tension with a colleague 2 cubicles over from you, or whether you and your teammate based across the country in Los Angeles can't seem to agree on a schedule for your Zoom meetings, peer mediation might be for you.
I know things have been tough lately, but I'm here for you.
In this video, I'll discuss what peer mediation is, its benefits, when you might consider using it, and whether there are times you should avoid it. I'm Bob Bordone. I'm a senior fellow at Harvard Law School and the founder and former director of Harvard Law School's Negotiation and Mediation Clinical Program. In addition, I'm a founder and principal at the Cambridge Negotiation Institute, and I spend a fair amount of my career mediating disputes and helping people resolve their conflicts. So, peer mediation is a particular form of mediation where one's colleagues or peers, as opposed to an outsider, superior, or another party like a human resources person, serve as a mediator to help parties resolve conflict. As a reminder, a mediator is a third party who helps others in a conflict resolve their dispute. Mediators pride themselves on being neutral and impartial.
Amateurs.
Peer mediation can be found in professional contexts, but it's perhaps most often found in school and university contexts, where students in conflict might be unable to resolve a situation on their own, but also unwilling to involve administrators or other university resources where there might be formal processes and rules that might involve discipline. While virtually anyone in conflict can benefit from mediation, as I've discussed in earlier videos, there are particular circumstances where peer mediation can be especially helpful. Some questions to consider when deciding whether to reach out for peer mediation are, first, have my own attempts to resolve a conflict with the other party or parties fallen flat? For example, during the past academic year when many university students were taking classes and working remotely, there emerged a whole new set of conflicts that seemed more complicated than they might have been if the parties were working in the same physical space. In one instance, 3 students were assigned to a project working with a real-life client. The university itself was based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the Eastern time zone, and 2 of the students were taking classes from their homes on the East Coast. One was in New York City and the other in Philadelphia. The third, however, decided to spend the pandemic in Europe and travel as much as possible. Sounds like fun, right? Here's the deal. The students were required to have weekly team meetings. The 2 based on the East Coast felt that it was appropriate to have a fixed weekly meeting time that was convenient to business hours on the East Coast. The European-based student insisted that meeting times be variable from week to week, or that a routine meeting be established that would alternate from US-based time to European-based time every other week. The students on the East Coast said they were fine with their partner traveling through Europe during the pandemic as long as he got his share of the work done. But they did not feel it was appropriate for them to have to adjust weekly meeting times to accommodate someone who decided to travel in Europe rather than to devote his full-time activity to school, as is expected of law students. Despite various attempts to resolve this on their own, they reached an impasse. So, second question to ask with respect to peer mediation is, are my peers or colleagues in a better place to help out than an outside mediator, judge, or authority, for example? In assessing this, you might ask a few questions. First, would there be some benefit to having a mediator who is familiar with the issues, the environment, the culture, and the conditions that need to be resolved? In the student context, for example, it can sometimes be advantageous having a mediator who knows something about student culture, norms, and expectations. Second, are there downsides to reaching out to others for help? For example, in some contexts, as upsetting and annoying as the situation is, you just might not feel comfortable or you might not be willing to bring the issue to someone who is a decider or who has the authority to resolve the dispute. In the above example, though the 2 East Coast-based students felt totally justified in their staff, they felt that going to their professor would basically be ratting out their fellow student, and they just weren't prepared to do that.
I'll bet they do!
In other instances, parties might feel embarrassed to go to someone in charge, like a parent or a law enforcement authority or a professor, because they worried that asking for help would show that they were unable to resolve their own conflicts on their own. As I discussed in another video on the value of mediation, it's actually really healthy and normal to reach out for help when someone's in conflict. But if you're not feeling that way, peer mediation might be an easier way to ask for help without feeling embarrassed. A third reason why one might prefer peer mediation over bringing in an outside mediator might relate to cost. In most situations, peer mediation is either free or provided at a very low cost. Hiring an outside mediator can be significantly more costly. So peer mediation has some really nice benefits. You'll typically get someone who has received some specialized training for how to set up a process and how to facilitate resolution between the parties in dispute. In most, though not all cases, peer mediation is offered for free or at cost. When it works, peer mediation can do more than just resolve the dispute. Peer mediators often help you restore or improve the relationship between you and the others in your place of work or your school or your residential learning environment. While this is not a reason to use peer mediation, it's typically the case that those who are trained in and involved in peer mediation programs actually do so because they want to learn more about the field of dispute and conflict resolution. And so using their services actually gives them an opportunity to learn.
I cannot show you everything.
And considering peer mediation, there are some situations where it might not be the best process choice. For example, if there's a really big power difference between the parties, or if there's a history of bullying, peer mediation might simply be a vehicle by which those differences end up getting exacerbated. In addition, in some contexts, there might be a clear violation of law or procedure that require more formal reporting, perhaps a formal disciplinary process or specialized knowledge or training. Peer mediation might not be appropriate because the conflict is not just between the parties. In this case, the student accused of plagiarism has broken other rules that speak to the integrity of the academic system. Similarly, in a workplace, an allegation of bullying may not be subject to peer mediation. In that case, it might be important to notify management, where there may be formal processes in place. To be clear, in a situation like this, depending on the nature of the alleged activity, mediation may still be appropriate. But it's less likely that you want to start with peer mediation without ensuring that this process choice is consistent with overarching policies. Many school systems, universities, and workplaces have peer mediation programs in place. They offer a tremendous resource to those living within a community and who may find themselves in conflict with each other. They also provide a fantastic way for people who want to learn more about mediation and who want to receive training in peer mediation to expose themselves to skills like facilitation and mediation. If you'd like to learn more about how to mediate, or if you are in need of a mediator, please reach out to me at bobbordone.com or at the Cambridge Negotiation Institute. And to keep on learning, click on the next video.